Hello everybody, this is Tyler here once again from the Character Workshop, about to beat up a dead horse, and I'm kind of proud of it. So, as I mentioned briefly in the credits of my last episode of It Came From England, I'm going to be doing my first commentary episode of It Came From England. So, I'm going to be doing a commentary on a video from a British YouTuber, but this isn't somebody I've talked about in the past. Oh, no. This is going to be somebody entirely different. So, you guys all remembered I did a two-part episode a few months ago about Thomas YouTubers, right? Well, this video is going to be me doing a commentary on another Thomas YouTuber that I didn't talk about in my original video. And the reason why I've never talked about this guy in my Thomas YouTubers video is because I honestly haven't watched all of his content. And not only that, the stuff I have seen from him is non-Thomas stuff, so yeah, like, how can I really include this guy in that video? So I decided to do an entire commentary video on this guy. So without further ado, time to do a commentary video on James A. Williams. So James A. Williams is another British YouTuber who's interested in Thomas and Friends. However, it's not just Thomas and Friends he likes. He's also a fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, Power Rangers, Nostalgia Critic, DuckTales 2017, My Little, oh, for fuck's sakes. God damn it, we've got another person on YouTube who's a fan of both My Little Pony and Thomas and Friends. That is one thing I've never understood over my past, many years of being on the internet. Like, why are there so many people who are, like, fans of MLP and Thomas and Friends? I personally don't see the connection between the two. Like, what? Sorry that I went off a little bit right there, but other than that, James A. Williams is just a simple, British YouTuber who talks about children's shows. And he talks about it to the point where, like, he's been criticized about it a lot. And yeah, I remember in the opening of his review of the Naughty franchise, he basically went on a whole 11 minutes, rant about, like, why he reviews children's content. So yeah, I'm not gonna, like, criticize him for doing that alone. I mean, that would make me a hypocrite, honestly, because I've reviewed a fair chunk of, children's media on this show. Thomas and Friends, The Trapdoor, Tugs, The Mr. Men, the list goes on. So, I can't say anything about that. So, anyways, moving onward with him. Now, personally, I don't think James A. Williams is a bad guy. He seems like a pretty cool guy, but, like, the reason why I wanted to do a commentary video on him is because he said some things in, like, some of his videos that just, like, honestly, I disagree with. It kind of pisses me off, and it kind of makes me feel attacked for, like, being an American. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I'll explain a little bit more about it as we get along with this commentary video on him. Now, for this video, I was going to cover the problems with Bob the Builder reboots, but, that video's been talked about by a lot of people, a lot. It's, like, his most popular, like, review video on his channel, I believe. So I was going to skip that, and I saw a recent video of his from, like, last month that said why I review kids shows, and I'm like, oh, this ought to be interesting because, like I've already mentioned before, this guy's been criticized for reviewing kids content. And I saw it, and it's basically just this intro from the Naughty video. Thank you, I wasted 11 minutes of my life just rewatching something that I've already watched in the past, so I'm not going to do a commentary on that. So I'm like, as much as it's going to beat up a dead horse, I might as well take a look at his Bob the Builder reboots video again, because, a lot of people recognize him for it, and it's probably the one video of his that, like, I have the most, like, disagreements with. That and his video on why, he thinks Michelangelo is better than Alec Baldwin, but that's another video for another day. So anyways, let us get right down to the dirty and talk about James A. Williams and the problems with the Bob the Builder reboot. So before I get into the video, I would like to thank a YouTuber by the name of Dem Spicy Memes Boys. First of all, quite a username you got there. Secondly, they left a comment on the Bob the Builder reboot video, giving basically a timestamps about everything that James talks about in the video. So first of all, thank you for leaving that comment on the video, so I won't have to cover everything in the video, because his video, keep in mind, is like over 30 minutes long. Now, that's honestly kind of crazy. 30 minutes of talking about just a reboot of a children's show? Yeah, I know, right? It's kind of weird. But, yeah, once again, thank you, Dem Spicy Meme Boys, for giving the timestamps for the different things James talks about in the video. So, the first thing he talks about is basically the intro, of course, of his video, why he's reviewing the Bob the Builder reboot, and basically also explaining why it took him, 3 years to cover the Bob the Builder reboot instead of talking about it as soon as it came out around 2015. Dang, it's been like 5 years since the reboot's come out. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I know. Despite all the negative feedback, they still managed to make 3 seasons of this. Are the people at Mattel Creations just blind to negative criticism or something?
When it comes to your point about, oh, Mattel is just blind when it comes to criticism, I'm sure the main reason for this is because they honestly just don't listen to the demographic that's intended for these shows like Bob the Builder and Thomas and Friends and all that stuff, because, to be honest, they weren't intended for us to begin with. They were intended for younger children, so obviously they're not gonna, listen to us when it comes to, our thoughts on these shows, because our thoughts don't matter because we're not in the main demographic. As sad as it may seem, that's just the reality of, the film industry, basically. So, anyways, moving on. So then later on in the review, he talks about the history of the show and, of course, all the other, different named shows that also coincide with Bob the Builder, like Project Build It, Ready, Set, Build. And this is, like, honestly, one of the first things he said in the review that just kind of, like, made me somewhat pissed, and that's in regards to like how the show was treated in the US, so let's see what he has to say about it.
Even though American kids love the show too, I do have to admit, this dub is nowhere near as enjoyable as the UK dub. I mean, no offense to whoever grew up watching the US dub and all, but sometimes certain things would be better off if they just stayed in the UK.
That comment that he made right there about some things just deserve to be stayed in the UK, that just honestly pissed me off when I first watched this. I'm sorry for being honest, but that's just how I felt about it. So, judging by your logic, that means, we here in the US shouldn't be getting Thomas and Friends, Danger Mouse, Dr. Freaking Who, Mr. Bean. We won't be getting any of that stuff, according to your logic, so yeah, I just... What were you thinking when you said that? Now, I'm assuming he meant, just the shows being dubbed here in the US, which I understand, but like, I don't know, just the way you said it just didn't make it sound right. That's like me saying, oh, some things are best left in the United States, so that means you won't be getting Disney, Marvel, Looney Tunes, BioShock. You won't be getting any of that stuff. It's just stupid. Now, after talking about the original series, he starts talking about Project Build It, which is also, like, along with the original series, that's, like, the only other Bob the Builder series I've seen as a kid, so yeah, honestly kind of interested to see, some of his, thoughts about, this version of the show. However, he did say one thing I find to be, I don't know, just not terrible, but, like, kind of bizarre.
But Project Build It continues the story the original series left off.
Continues the story from where the original series left off. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been like a long time since I've watched Bob the Builder, but I don't remember there being like some kind of story arc within, both shows. Like, oh, at the very end of the original series, Bob the Builder becomes the reincarnation of Jesus Christ or something, and then in Project Build It, he, I don't know, uses his godlike powers for good, just like Rose at the very end of Departing the Ways from Doctor Who. I don't know. I'm just going off, randomly, but like, I don't know. Bob the Builder with a story, it's just, I don't know.
But after a few seasons, Project Build It was eventually cancelled for unknown reasons, so the story wasn't exactly wrapped up at the end.
Story wasn't exactly wrapped up at the end. I was going to say something else, but I would just be repeating myself from the last point, so moving on. Now, I'm going to skip the portion of the video where he talks about Ready Steady Build, because honestly, he doesn't have anything interesting for me to talk about, and plus, if he did, I would probably be repeating myself. So then he eventually starts talking about the reboot itself. Now, he does briefly, rants about the theme song. It's kind of, I mean, it would make sense, theme songs normally the start of the show. It makes sense that first thing he would talk about in complaining about the reboot is the theme song. But, like, he kind of went on a pretty decent length of ranting about the theme song. Most particularly how they just, like, cut out just one little part of the theme song, and I'll just show you, what he means, what he's talking about when it comes to that.
Bob and the team are so much fun, and they get the job done! Yeah!
Why did they cut it out? What, did the intro have to be exactly 30 seconds long?
First off, it was just one little section of the song. It's not like, the kids who are watching the reboot are gonna, notice it that much. And plus, the people who are gonna notice it are probably people who watched the original series. So, yeah, I don't think it's really that big of a deal, in my opinion. I know you think otherwise, but like, yeah, I didn't think it was that much of a big deal. So then, he also mentioned that the theme song, didn't mention Rolly and Dizzy in there, and Rolly and Dizzy were main characters of the original series, and were sort of made into side characters in the reboot, and he also sort of criticized that as well.
Both Rolly and Dizzy have plenty of story ideas for them. Plenty.
Dizzy and Rolly have plenty of story ideas. Mind telling us what kind of story ideas they can have?